Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, or if you watched parts 1 and 2 of this video, welcome back. The video you're watching today is an updated, combined version of the emergency alert system Iceberg that I had previously split into 2 videos. This one contains updated entries, courtesy of you all who helped me find information that I didn't know about the first time around. FYI, these new entries are timestamped here, so if you watch the first 2 parts and you just want to listen to new information, you can just check it out, instead of watching all 2 hours of this. Now, sadly, there are still 1 or 2 things that maybe lack a little bit of clarity, but maybe this video will get more views and the OP will comment or something. There's not necessarily a ton of missing information, there's just a few things I was confused about, but many of you were super informative and helped get me on the right track, so honestly, it's all good. If you enjoy this video, make sure to comment your favorite entry and subscribe to stick around for more content like this. You can join my Discord if you'd like to help pick future Iceberg topics, and if you want to count yourself amongst my greatest supporters, you can do so by joining my Patreon. These members get to watch every video a little bit early, so if that interests you, please consider the support. Now sit back, relax, play some Minecraft or something, I don't know, and let's get right into this video. Tornado. There are EAS systems all over the world, but naturally this iceberg is a little bit biased towards the USA, given that is where I and most of my audience is from. Now, tornadoes are, of course, not exclusive to the USA, but they're extremely common here, and this is also the most frequent type of EAS alert we get. Or at least that, people talk about. Personally, I have never witnessed a tornado, which upsets me greatly because I think they're awesome, but I have heard several EAS alerts for warnings or watches around me. The EAS system can activate for both tornado watches and warnings. Again, if you're from the USA, I bet you've heard them at least once. A watch indicates that conditions are favorable for tornadoes, whereas a warning indicates one has been sighted on radar or in person. Anyway, this is probably the most common type of EAS alert that people actually see, which is why it's so high up on the iceberg.
7 miles west of High Point, moving northeast at 40 miles per hour. Hazards in the warning include a tornado, golf ball-sized hail, other destructive winds in excess of 70 miles per hour. Locations in the path of the storm include Jamestown, Colfax, Forest Oaks, Greensboro, PTI Airport, Summerfield, Lake Town.
NOAA Weather Radio. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is a 24/7 radio broadcast system in the USA responsible for the emergency alert system, as well as Amber Alerts and other public safety messages. Many of the messages we'll hear today come from this service right here. Most common watches and warnings. The most common warnings from the EAS are usually thunderstorm warnings. So not quite tornado watches, but just warnings about severe weather. The stuff that might take a few roof shingles off your house and can absolutely be hazardous to life, but not necessarily like Helldivers 2 fire tornado level. Here's an example of one of these more quote-unquote tame thunderstorm EAS alerts. Now, there's no one ranking of the most common types of alerts or their frequencies, so this isn't quite speculation, but I also can't definitely say that thunderstorm warnings are the most common all the time. Other super common EAS alerts include amber alerts, blizzard alerts, or high wind alerts, which are shown when wind speeds exceed 40 miles an hour.
Southeastern Williamson County, northeastern Travis County.
Amber Alert. I've mentioned Amber Alert now a few times. Most of you are probably familiar with it, but for my audience outside of America and the few countries that have since adopted the program, Amber Alerts are sent out when children are missing. The idea is that a message is sent through radio, TV, and perhaps most importantly, cell phones, to get the community to rally in search of a missing child. A typical Amber Alert has a name and outfit of a missing child where possible, and a license plate or a description of a person with whom they were last seen. As of 2024, Amber Alerts have contributed to the rescue of over 1,200 kids, with 226 of those rescues tied to alerts that were activated on cell phones. The program was created in reference to Amber Renee Harmon, a 9-year-old girl who was abducted in 1996 in Texas and found dead a few days later. The criteria for issuing an Amber Alert is actually pretty strict. Specific guidelines are local or department to department, but the U.S. Department of Justice suggests that a few criteria are met for local law enforcement to activate one. Number 1. Law enforcement must confirm that an abduction has taken place. Number 2. The child must be at risk of serious injury or death. Number 3. There must be sufficient descriptive information of child, captor, or captor's vehicle to issue an alert. Number 4. The child must be under 18 years of age. There exists a lot of controversy regarding this program. A lot of the abductions are custodial issues where parents sort of miscommunicate with one another. It is really hard to truly investigate the efficacy of the program, though, because it's impossible to know if one of those custodial abductions would have been resolved without the issue of an Amber Alert. So it's kind of impossible to isolate the effect in that regard. Another issue has to do with desensitization. I, for one, can attest to the fact that I get these all the time, often when I'm in my house or in school, and it's am I supposed to go outside and look? They're often not even near me. One incident in Texas sent alerts at 4:50 in the morning to people as far as 8 hours away from the incident, which leads to people just getting frustrated and ignoring future alerts. Tests. EAS systems are tested frequently to ensure they work. You'll see this very frequently on cable TV in the USA. They also come through the phone sometimes. In 2018, the Trump administration sent out a special test of the presidential alert system to people's phones. Obviously, these are just tests, but sometimes they can be annoying if you're trying to watch something because they last a full 30 seconds. Here is a typical EAS test.
She was babysitting him, and she went 70 years, her entire lifetime.
Authorities, in coordination with emergency alert system participants, including broadcast, cable, satellite, and wireline participants in your area. Had this been an actual emergency, the attention...
Scenarios/mocks/analog horror. So I bet this is the kind of thing that actually brought some of you guys here today. Fake EAS videos have been insanely popular on YouTube for a decade now. There are even some channels that specialize in making fake EAS videos for apocalyptic events, and some full analog horror series have spun out of the idea. Or at least EAS tones have now become a popular, overdone trope in analog horror. Some of them are actually pretty good though. We'll actually discuss a few of these channels on the Iceberg today.
Threat. PA.
Emergency Broadcast System. The Emergency Broadcast System was used from 1963 until 1997 before being replaced by the Emergency Alert System we have today. It replaced a system called CONELRAD, which was used during the Cold War to warn Americans of enemy attacks, now pivoting from a wartime tool to one more focused on natural disasters and such. It used the attention signal still heard in some EAS messaging, designed to be unpleasant to the listener. There was a false activation, which we'll bring up later, and it wasn't the most well-structured program because it could basically only be activated by the president. For that reason, it was never really used. Here's a video of a test activation though, to show what it would have looked like.
This is a test. For the next 60 seconds, this station will conduct a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
Custom screen for local networks. Though I'm not really sure what the creator is specifically referring to here, some local news networks have their own backdrop to go along with a message, rather than just using standard text. Here's an example of what that looks like. One from NBC4, and another from Fox. National test. Every once in a while, the EAS system is tested nationwide to make sure every station functions properly. In February of 2011, the FCC announced that they would test the system in November of that year, which looked like this. Their findings indicated that only half of participating stations received the signal, saying some failed to receive or retransmit alerts due to erroneous equipment configuration, equipment readiness, and upkeep issues, and confusion regarding EAS rules and technical requirements. Also, many local stations were not participating as well as they should have been. Some people got a message with the audio or visuals missing, with there being one instance of Lady Gaga playing in the background, for some reason.
Seriously? Lady Gaga?
There was a second national test in 2016, then a third in 2017, and two more in 2018 and 19. In 2020, it was pushed to the following year because of COVID. A 2022 test was pushed back to 2023, and since then, tests announced for 2024 and 5 have been cancelled by the FCC for unknown reasons. Emergency Action Notification. Emergency Action Notifications, which in 2022 were renamed to National Emergency Messages, are what would be used in the case of a national emergency/mass casualty event. These can only be activated by the president and have never been used outside of a few accidental broadcasts. Now, these are less for like tornadoes and are more reserved for something like nuclear war. The 2011 test of the emergency alert system that I mentioned in the previous entry used the Emergency Action Notification Protocol, so this is what the signal might have looked like, at least in 2011. But I'm sure it's different by now. Hawaii Emergency Action Notification Incident. Though very terrifying, this event is extremely well known and thus very high up on the iceberg. In 2018, this alert was sent to people's phones, also going through the TV and radio. The message, warning of a ballistic missile headed towards Hawaii, occurred during a period of high tension with North Korea and the US, with many at the time believing it was real. Just 38 minutes after the alert was sent out, state officials confirmed it was fake, sending out another message that it was a false alarm. The same officials would soon blame the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency for the error. This led to an FCC and congressional investigation alongside several resignations. Though not real, this was obviously very terrifying. There are all sorts of videos and final messages that people recorded and put online at the time, which is actually quite a terrifying glimpse into what people assumed would be their final moments.
Watching this video, that means I didn't make it because of the missile that's coming towards Hawaii. I just parred the last hole and I just hit the shiznik out of my ball. So
this is what the TV alert looked like.
The U.S. Pacific Command has detected a missile threat to Hawaii. A missile may impact on land or sea within minutes. This is not a drill. If you are indoors, stay indoors. If you are outdoors, seek immediate shelter in a building. Remain indoors well away from windows. If you are driving, pull safely to the side of the road and seek shelter in a building or lay on the floor. We will announce when the threat has ended.
Alberta Emergency Warning System. This system was active in Alberta, Canada, created in 1987 in response to an F4 tornado in Edmonton which killed 27 people. Eventually, come 2011, it was replaced by the Alberta Emergency Alert, which lasted until 2023 when it was decommissioned and replaced by Canada's national system, the AEA. At the time, it could have been activated by Alberta's Environmental Agency or local forces for a variety of reasons, from Amber Alerts to weather to terror attacks. It had a cool look to it, with this symbol that differs from the more boring ones we have today. National EAS Test. I feel like I already covered this one, so I'm going to gloss over this entry. Robotic voices. Why is it that, broadly speaking, all of these alerts, regardless of what individual system they are from, all use terrifying robotic voices? Well, to give an equally broad answer to a broad question, it's because the system is set up to work for various emergencies. When something like this happens, you need to give information that can't be predicted. The location of an event, or the length of time a warning is active for, as an example. The message needs to be streamlined across an area, and there might not necessarily be time for a human to read it off themselves. So instead, a text-to-speech system is used, one of the ones created much earlier than the ones we all see on social media all the time. This helps avoid human error that can cost lives. It saved a ton of time being set up this way, where stations basically listen for a centralized broadcast and then repeat the information they hear using a text-to-speech program. Also, we know that the original emergency tone was created because it sounds unpleasant, and these voices double over with the effect of sounding creepy enough to capture attention for a continued period of time. Amber Alert Siren. The Amber Alert siren has a slightly different pitch to the typical emergency alert siren. It's freaking annoying, and I'll play it very quietly. A Texas family actually sued Apple after they alleged this alert played so loudly through their kids' headphones that they got permanent hearing damage. It does look like, though, as of this year, Apple won the case. 2016 Voice Overhaul. The 2016 EAS national test was a really important one. Those showing improvement over the 2011 one pointed to future directions for improvement. Some problems arose regarding the sound quality, an inability to deliver the message in Spanish in some places, and an occasional lack of equipment upkeep and readiness. After this year, the EAS voice changed slightly. Here's a brief comparison of the differences.
This is a national test of the emergency alert system. This is only a test. Broadcast and cable operators in the area have developed this system in voluntary cooperation.
This is a test of the National Emergency Alert System. This system was developed by broadcast and cable operators in voluntary cooperation with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Federal Communications Commission, and local authorities to keep you informed in the event of an emergency.
I can't find a single clear explanation as to why this was really done, but there's been no major announcement about it. I'm sure the idea was just for clarity, but to me they honestly sound very similar. So similar that I'm very curious to see how the justification was made. EAS activation fails. This is an extremely broad category. Every year during the national tests, some stations fail to participate, usually due to equipment not being kept up or occasionally problems with the internet. It's usually the smaller stations with less funding doing this as well. They are improving though. For example, in 2016, the FCC reported that, broadly, 80.2% of participants, meaning stations that should have replicated and sent out the alert, reported no problems. The remaining 19.8% reported some issue, from audio problems to full-on failure. But by 2023, the FCC reported that 94.7% of participants successfully retransmitted the message. That same source showed that it steadily improved throughout the early 2020s. Same header. Same, or specific area message encoding, is used by NOAA weather stations as a system of codes to identify weather threats to specific counties. The organization themselves states, "How does SAME work? Utilizing the Emergency Alert System, EAS, the National Weather Service sends a digital code before and after each alert message through our NOAA weather transmitters. The same weather radios act as EAS decoders and decipher what the alert is and which county it is valid for." You actually hear this though. When the EAS message screeches a few times before the voice speaks, the very first tone you hear is the same header, hence calling it the header because it comes first. Even though you obviously can't tell, the tone is a code explaining where the message is relevant. The final screech you hear indicates the message is over. This order allows for stations to relay the message automatically, but only to where it needs to go. It also includes obvious details that you might want to know, like whether or not it's a tsunami versus a tornado. There are different SAME codes for each type of emergency, but we'll talk about those later. Attention signal. Another crucial part of the EAS message is the attention signal. After the SAME header goes off, the attention signal comes. This is the part which, on TV at least, it sounds like this. If you're listening on an NOAA radio station, it's a bit different. These are the infamous tones which have, over the years, been characterized as anything from creepy to annoying. I will say, though, that however you feel about them, they definitely contribute to the general unease lots of people feel while listening to these tones, and are part of why people enjoy watching these videos so much. The attention tone's explicit purpose is getting your attention, and it was chosen for sounding unpleasant. So if it sounds shrill to you, that means it's working. Siren Head. Siren Head is a cryptid created by Trevor Henderson. He made all sorts of entities and spooky art, but this one really caught on. It's actually hard to communicate to someone just how big this guy was a few years ago. In my opinion, he is a megalophobic representation of the sort of anxieties that EAS tones make us feel, personified and anthropomorphized a little bit as this giant, dangerous monster. He's a lot like Slender Man insofar as he's sort of taken a life of his own outside of just Trevor Henderson's art, and there's multiple short stories, clips, and even full games about him. Kids tend to love him as well. Hijackings. Oh boy, this could be a huge entry of its own, and I actually have an iceberg about broadcast hijackings as a whole, and even a video about a specific one. So I really like this sort of thing. There have been a few instances of outside actors somehow gaining control of the EAS system on small to medium scales. The most infamous incident of this type occurred in 2013, where hijackers took over the system to send messages about a zombie apocalypse. That actually has an entry of its own, so we won't go over it all just yet. In 2020, the system was hijacked so that in Jefferson County, Washington, false alerts were sent out about a radiological hazard. That one, though, funnily enough, said that the radio provider should have changed his password. This doesn't honestly happen that often, which is certainly for the best, even if these are pretty funny. 2011 National EAS Test. I briefly talked about this in the entry covering testing in general, but basically the 2011 test was the first ever national test of the system. It had tons of errors, which, though unfortunate, provided a ton of pathways for improvement, and since then, the annual tests have only gotten better and better. The issues in 2011 mainly had to do with participation. Like, every channel and radio station should have been ready to receive the signal, but not all of them were. There were also funny examples that came during this test, such as Lady Gaga audio playing during the test for one channel. Pre-recorded tapes. I'm not exactly sure what this entry is referring to. Older versions of the EAS system would have likely played pre-recorded VHS tapes, and in fact you can find never broadcasted emergency tapes on YouTube nowadays, probably created during the Nixon or LBJ administrations. I'll play an example of one.
Department of Defense. Attack warning means that an actual attack against this country has been detected, and that immediate protective action should be taken. Follow the instructions of your local government officials. I repeat, follow the instructions of your local government officials. If these instructions are not known to you, but you know where a public fallout shelter is located, you should proceed to that shelter as quickly as possible. Public shelters are in buildings marked with yellow and black signs with the words Fallout Shelter on.
Nowadays, we wouldn't use pre-recorded messages anymore, as that same technology I mentioned earlier actually encodes the message so it can be transmitted quicker, saving a lot of time. Alert, alert, alert. This is one that I missed initially. I wasn't quite sure what it meant, but as a few of you guys pointed out, this is just an earlier type of alert that said, well, alert, alert, alert. Generally, these were created by the Holly Ann encoder line. Funnily enough, I actually used an example of this very alert in part 2 without even knowing it. But yeah, this text right here is what the OP was talking about. Just this little banner at the top. Silver alert. A silver alert is an alert issued for a missing senior citizen. As you might expect, this usually pertains to disabled or demented elderly individuals who often just walk out of care facilities or their own homes and then get lost. It's not necessarily a dramatic kidnapping, but it is just as dangerous. These are usually just sent over the wireless emergency alert system, but occasionally show up on TV. Usually in that case though, it's like a news story and not necessarily an EAS interruption. Here's an example.
All right, just in this morning, Seattle police need your help looking for a missing man. He is 67-year-old Michael Tramble. He was last seen wearing a dark gray coat, blue jeans, and a black sweater. You see his picture there. Mr. Tramble has dementia, and police say he was previously found in an area near Rainier Avenue South and South Walden Street, so he may be in that area again. If you spot him, call 911.
Special weather statements. Special weather statements are announcements regarding significant, but not life-threatening weather conditions. It can refer to fog, wind, or thunderstorms, for example. Here's a video of one.
Special weather statement. For the following counties, Lackawanna, Luzerne, and Wyoming, a strong snow squall will impact the region.
SPC collective outlooks. I believe this refers to SPC convective outlooks, convective referring to convection, in the water cycle. Convective outlooks are just storm predictions from NOAA, and you can keep track of them online. CONELRAD. CONELRAD was a previous iteration of the EAS system we have today, used during the Cold War. It was established by President Truman in 1951, with the idea being a system of several stations taking turns broadcasting and switching rapidly so that Soviet bombers wouldn't be able to hone in on a single radio target. CONELRAD was never intended to be used for weather alerts, only missile strikes. CONELRAD would alert stations by going on and off in 5-second chunks, then transmitting a 1 kHz tone for 15 seconds straight. When it would go off, most stations would stop transmitting, but a select few would continue sending the CONELRAD message at 640 or 1240 kHz. And some radios sold in the US at the time actually had symbols for those frequencies to help you dial in during an emergency. It wasn't the greatest system, and even went off on accident a few times. EBS/CONELRAD false alarms. And that last sentence brings us right here. The CONELRAD process of turning on and off to confuse enemy bombers was simple, but it could easily get activated by accident during thunderstorms. In 1955, there was a false alarm after a Canadian radar raised an alert for an American bomber, unaware that a training exercise was going on. Also in 1959, during what should have been a test message, stations in Wisconsin and Michigan relayed the actual message, "This is an air defense radio alert." This caused a media blackout which lasted around 20 minutes. Local access alerts. Local access alerts were broadly replaced by today's EAS, but are still used in a limited capacity in some areas. Local access alerts basically work by having a local authority, like law enforcement or environmental agencies, call a number and read off a pin, and then all TVs in the area display a message communicated by the instigator. This has generally been phased out due to the advent of digital cable. This is an example of what it looked like.
Information or instructions. Stay in shelters or homes until the all clear message is broadcast. The sirens will not be sounded for the all clear. Repeat, the sirens will not be sounded for the all clear. Avoid using the telephone except for emergency.
EAS use in U.S. territories. U.S. territories also use the EAS system. However, notably, during the 2023 test, stations in those territories had the lowest retransmission rates, much lower than the continental U.S. According to the FCC's own report, the Northern Mariana Islands recorded the lowest success rate, at 20% retransmission. The others were Guam at 33.3%, American Samoa at 66.7%, the U.S. Virgin Islands at 88.9%, and Puerto Rico at 89.7%. Amongst U.S. states, Wyoming had the lowest retransmission rate at 88.1%. So while the system does extend to those regions, they didn't do the most well on recent tests. The FCC is working on it though. J-Alert. J-Alert is an emergency messaging system in Japan, created in 2007. It has very good coverage. One source shows that by 2013, 99.6% of Japanese municipalities had adopted the system, so it's probably even higher by now. There have been some notable activations of it, like when North Korea tested a missile near Japanese waters. Here's a clip of that activation. It's also gone off during earthquakes and tsunamis, which Japan is very much prone to. SASMEX. La Sistema de Alerta Sísmica Mexicano, or SASMEX, is an earthquake warning system covering central and southern Mexico. It was created after the devastating 1985 Mexico City earthquake. This is what it sounds like. Honestly, I think it's pretty cool how it manages to take over your whole phone like that. Taiwan Alert. Taiwan's National Communications Commission has a service called the Cell Broadcast Service, which is basically their alert system. China once sent a satellite called the Einstein probe above Taiwanese airspace, setting it off. Russia Alert. Russia's EAS system is called the All-Russian Comprehensive System Information and Warning the Population in Crowded Places. It has 4 levels: federal, interregional, regional, and municipal. As you might imagine, it's a pretty big setup. Ukraine Alert. It's honestly really hard to find information on whatever EAS system Ukraine had, given the war. If you just Google it, you'll only find information about air raids, and honestly, that's probably whatever systems they have been diverted to. There is one program that started development in 2022 and is now used to notify people about airstrikes. That program is called Ukrainian Siren Alerts, or UASA. There are a lot of local air raid sirens, as you can imagine, and have probably even seen in videos, but information on them is pretty scarce for security reasons. Pearl Harbor Emergency Broadcast. The infamous boat touching incident happened long before many of these systems we're talking about today, or even their inspirations, were in place. What did happen during Pearl Harbor, however, was a single news broadcast. KGU, a radio station in Honolulu, broadcast a play-by-play of the attack. A radio operator could actually see the battle from a distance and managed to get through to an NBC station in New York, providing this report. There are only some short clips of it on YouTube, but I'll play a little bit of it.
Hawaii. I am speaking from the roof of the Advertiser Publishing Company building. We have witnessed this morning a distant view, a great battle off Pearl Harbor, and a severe bombing of Pearl Harbor by enemy planes, undoubtedly Japanese. The city of Honolulu has also been attacked.
Hurricane Katrina EAS. Hurricane Katrina was one of the worst disasters, not just hurricanes, in recent American history. In part because of that, listening to the EAS messages today about the event is so much more terrifying. All these messages are worth listening to, but I can only play some, so I will, and then I'll talk about it.
Devastating damage expected. Hurricane Katrina, a most powerful hurricane with unprecedented strength, rivaling the intensity of Hurricane Camille of 1969. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks, perhaps longer. At least one half of well-constructed homes will have roof and wall failure. All gabled roofs will fail, leaving those homes severely damaged or destroyed. The majority of industrial buildings will become non-functional. Partial to complete wall and roof failure is expected. All wood-framed low-rising apartment buildings will be destroyed. Concrete-blocked low-rise apartments will sustain major damage, including some wall and roof failure. High-rise office and apartment buildings will sway dangerously, a few to the point of total collapse. All windows will blow out. Airborne debris will be widespread, and may include heavy items such as household appliances, and even light vehicles. Sport utility vehicles and light trucks will be moved. The blown debris will create additional destruction. Persons, pets, and livestock exposed to the winds will face certain death if struck. Power outages will last for weeks, as most power poles will be down and transformers destroyed. Water shortages will make human suffering incredible by modern standards. The vast majority of native trees...
I just find it insanely creepy how bluntly the voice describes the sort of damage that buildings will face, and the notification that the land will be uninhabitable. I think the creepiest part is when it just talks about the water shortages. That human suffering will be incredible, it's just horrifying. Something about the voice in this message seems scarier than usual. I don't know, like it almost feels like it's accentuating its vowels a bit more. It just sounds more unnatural than the usual, already unnatural voice heard in so many of these. Anyway, that's it for this entry. For reasons you can probably imagine, it's a more iconic EAS message, but it's also extremely creepy. No EAS message sent out on 9/11. This entry refers to what is a bit of a controversy in the emergency alert system discussion. It's basically what I just said. 9/11, being one of the most terrifying and disastrous events in recent American history, did not have any EAS broadcast. Why? Well, the rationale was basically that literally every news station was already covering 9/11 as it was happening. In fact, many other channels went off the air with a message telling you to go watch the news. So it wasn't like you were going to miss it. Also, part of what made 9/11 so horrible was the unpredictability. What would the EAS system have even said? Since the EAS system only relays audio, it might have actually been worse than the live news coverage that was going on, giving you information slower. So while that sort of makes sense, some people aren't satisfied with that explanation, and it remains an, albeit limited, controversy to this day. LA riots emergency broadcast. During the 1992 LA riots, an EBS alert, remember the older emergency broadcasting system I talked about earlier, went out. It asked law enforcement to help, established a curfew, and gave information about the danger. It also mentions the National Guard having been activated. It's only a minute long, so I'll play it for you guys.
This is the Los Angeles County Emergency Broadcast System. This is not a test. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department is now in full mobilization. All off-duty sheriff's deputies are directed to contact their unit of assignment as soon as possible or contact the nearest Los Angeles County Sheriff's facility. Due to the escalation of the situation and seriousness of the problems that are occurring, the sheriff has mobilized all department personnel. The curfew has been extended to include the entire Los Angeles city limits and to include Los Angeles County boundaries of Vernon Avenue on the north, Lomita Boulevard on the south, Crenshaw Boulevard on the west, and the Long Beach Freeway on the east. The California Army National Guard has been deployed to assist the Sheriff's Department and Los Angeles Police Department in a mutual aid operation to restore law and order and to protect life and property. This concludes this activation of the Los Angeles County Emergency Broadcast System.
COVID-19 emergency alert. There was no one single major EAS activation for COVID, as you might have expected, given the nature of that challenge differing from, say, a tornado. However, what did happen very frequently was a sort of addendum to the usual EAS warnings, which mention COVID-19. Basically, these would explain that while you were taking whatever emergency preparations you were taking, you should also social distance. So it would be like, stay indoors, but watch out by the way for COVID. Sometimes it would pop up in drills too. Here's an example.
The civil authorities have issued a civil emergency message for El Paso, TX, beginning at 7:01 p.m. and ending at 8:01 p.m. Community-wide curfew is in place from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., unless it's essential or an emergency. Tote de queda e vigor de 10 p.m. of 5 a.m., exceto para emergencias o actividades esenciales.
There's actually a whole playlist that someone created with EAS alerts that mention COVID in some way, shape, or form. Alerts about COVID also occurred frequently in Canada. 1971 EBS mistake. On February 20th of 1971, a technician at the Cheyenne Mountain Complex accidentally transmitted a real EBS activation code, using the phrase, hatefulness. Radio and TV stations were ordered to stop broadcasting and direct people to the emergency stations. Here's what that sounded like if you were listening to the radio.
This station has interrupted its regular program at the request of the United States government to participate in the emergency broadcast system serving the Fort Wayne area. During this period, many radio stations will remain on the air, broadcasting news and official information for areas assigned to them. This station will remain on the air and will serve the Fort Wayne area. If you are not located in the Fort Wayne area, you should now tune your radio to other stations.
Basically, stations sat around waiting for the official broadcast to come through from the president, but it never did. They only actually got the alert to prepare for it, not receiving it. So nothing really happened, but many people were obviously worried. I mean, that actually might be worse. Imagine the president telling you something bad has happened and then you don't hear from him. I personally would have assumed that, DC just got nuked or something. Saudi Arabia/Israel emergency alert. I believe these two are grouped together because they're referring to the same event, that being the Gulf War. Specifically, a set of alerts that went out in both Israel and Saudi Arabia after a Scud missile had been launched. In early 1991, Iraq attacked Saudi and American military targets in Saudi Arabia, which, though terrifying, has been very well documented. Here's some footage from both of those countries showing the events.
رجاء الانتباه. لقد أطلق الدفاع المدني بالمنطقة الشرقية صفارة إنذار الخطر. عليك باتباع ما يلي: ارتدي القناع الواقي، ابق في مكان آمن، واصل مشاهدتك
Iran EAS. I'm pretty sure this isn't referring to any present-day system in Iran, but a particular alert that was used during the Iran-Iraq War called the Red Alarm. This was used to indicate Iraqi missiles had been sent into Iran. This is more of an air raid siren, but I'm pretty sure this entry refers to this video right here. I'm not sure if this was a live broadcast that picked up on an air raid siren, or if this was broadcast on TV as well as in real life. It's kind of hard to find info about this one, but if anyone is from either of those countries and knows more about it, let me know. Rare warnings. Something I picked up on while learning about the EAS community is that they often use radios of their own to try and listen in on rare or otherwise uncommon warnings or drills that go over the air. In the USA, at least, this can mean maybe a broadcast with a bug or glitch, so the audio doesn't go through correctly, or an alert that goes to either TV or radio but not both. On the other hand, you have something like maybe those COVID EAS alerts I mentioned earlier, insofar as they were brief mentions and don't get sent out anymore. This one is also pretty funny, and once again is from Canada. I'm just going to play it here.
A polar bear was reportedly seen in the Madeleine Center area, near the old airport. We ask residents to stay sheltered and not venture outside. If you see the animal, do not attempt to approach it and dial 911. For details, visit the SQ's social.
Illegal usage of EAS tones. Broadly speaking, it is illegal to broadcast EAS tones without being an authorized representative. It's usually punishable by a hefty fine. This is for a few reasons, such as making sure people don't get desensitized to the warnings, but also because if any station does play EAS audio and other stations pick up on it, they will think they're receiving a genuine EAS alert and begin broadcasting an EAS tone themselves. Think of it as an infection that spreads. There have been numerous instances of radio or TV stations getting sanctioned over this. They usually have to pay a fine and then demonstrate that they've changed their policies to ensure whatever happened doesn't happen again. For example, tones were used in the Olympus Has Fallen trailer, and TV channels that played initial versions of that trailer got fined. The Jaguars had a commercial that would play an EAS alert and say a storm is coming, until that got pulled and they too were fined. The Walking Dead once played one, and AMC was fined for it. It even happened in Young Sheldon. CBS downloaded YouTube audio of an EAS tone, modified it, put dialogue over it, even tested it on EAS receivers to see if it would trigger a reaction, and when they were positive it wouldn't, they put it in an episode. But the FCC still said it was illegal. There's actually a list on Wikipedia on the page about the emergency alert system documenting all of these occurrences. On one hand, it seems a little unnecessary, but it is of course important that people don't mistake alerts for, a commercial or something. Like radio advertisements you hear all the time with honking horns or police sirens in them. Usually for accident lawyers, which I'm just now putting together. Every beginning of the EAS is different. Guys, this really reminds me of the personalization meme that you used to see in Icebergs. Like every EAS alert is personalized. Anyway, this refers to the screeching at the beginning of every EAS alert. And that is true, they are all different. The beginnings of each message communicates, via tones and frequencies, the location and nature of the emergency, using the specific area messaging and coding system we've talked about before. Even if you had the exact same emergency in the same place, since the date and time would be different, so would the same code. You might of course not notice it because those tones aren't meant for you to differentiate, but for the radios listening in. The EAS Experience. The EAS Experience is a YouTube channel with over 700 videos that's been on the platform for years. They document and upload tons of EAS videos, and they were even really helpful when I made this video. If you're into EAS content, you've probably seen some of their videos already. But yeah, they serve as a great repertoire of EAS content, documenting funny, rare, and interesting alerts. Harvester. Harvester is another EAS YouTuber, but he makes pretend analog horror style videos. These have been popular for a long time, even before analog horror was as popular as it is now. People would still make, one example popping up off the back of my head is a Purge EAS alert. The quality of their videos is pretty good, though I'm not sure if they're still around, as they haven't uploaded in 2 years. Laces. So this entry was a misspelling of EASes, as in EAS with 2 extra letters. I believe it stands for Ace of Spades, not shoelaces. Thanks to Starry Scarab for pointing that out. They were a channel that made EAS scenarios. I'm not sure if they're done for good, but they were involved in a little bit of controversy and haven't uploaded in a year, with the last video being titled, "This Has Gone Too Far, Addressing My Cyberstalker." So yeah, I don't think they're actually making any EAS scenarios anytime soon, and I think they may have been included on this Iceberg because of that controversy. I agree with the top commenter of this video. Like, how is this community involved in so much drama when they literally just enjoy radio sounds? It's always groups like this, like the fire alarm community. Anyway, enough of that, but this channel is what this entry refers to. Electric Fanatic. Electric Fanatic is an EAS series created by the YouTuber Etlick. Originally that was also the channel's name, but I think it's been changed since then. Anyway, he's another fake EAS creator. He's collaborated with people like Harvester. He's got some popular videos, including one where the British Empire takes the whole world back. Old man coughs during monthly test. The legendary Jim9996 brought this to my attention. Like I speculated in the original video, this just refers to a dude coughing on the EAS alert. I'm not sure how this happened on a technical level, but here's the clip. I've also linked to it below if you want to watch the full video, which is like a compilation of messed up EAS alerts. So it's pretty cool.
When children are affected and investigators wish to enlist your help recovering these children, the National Weather Service and your local public safety officials use the emergency alert system to warn you of events that pose threats to your life, health, and property. Your local broadcasters volunteer to donate their airtime to bring you these messages. This text message.
Happy Jack and TV Station Down. I didn't pick up on this initially, so thank you to this user for pointing it out to me. Happy Jack is a song by an artist named Arch Bacon, which sounds pretty calm and ambient. Here's a few seconds of it to give you an idea. Now, this song is quote-unquote slightly infamous for being used in the background of an EAS alert issued in Ohio a few days before 9/11. Also, in the original upload, I mentioned not knowing both this entry and one called TV Station Down. I still don't quite know what that is, it's just phrased very broadly, but I think it refers to clips that talk about downed TV equipment. It's just an idea, I'm not quite sure though. Use of human voices. Usually, American EAS alerts do not have real human voices. This is because the whole point of the system is prioritizing speed, and the same code just tells a system what to say when the message is received. The voices you do hear, despite being robot voices, have been given names by the community, which is kind of funny. However, there are a few rare occasions where live broadcasts are a thing and human voices are used. Local access alerts, which have been gradually phased out, occasionally use human voices, and there are tons of older examples of this, like this video right here.
A tornado watch is in effect for the St. Joseph and Buchanan County area from now until 8 p.m.
Also in 2011, when tsunami alerts went out in California and Hawaii, they were read with human voices. Hypothetically, if there ever were to be a real presidential emergency activation, we would hear from the president or a representative of them. President speech using EBS. Though the EBS system was never activated by the president, there was a prepared speech to usher in his message. it would read as follows. The United States Emergency Broadcast System has been activated by direction of the President of the United States because of a grave national emergency. The Emergency Broadcast System comprises all communications facilities designated and authorized by the Federal Communications Commission to operate during a period of national emergency. Yearly Conelrad Drill. Conelrad was the system in place from 1951 to 1963. I only see one source that mentions yearly drills, which they say would have occurred on May 1st, though the first nationwide test took place in September of 1953. Montana, Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin zombie alert incident. I'm just going to call this the Midwest zombie alert. In 2013, we got one of the funniest moments in emergency alert system history. If you've hung around the EAS community for any amount of time, or just the internet, you've definitely heard about this one, the infamous zombie apocalypse hijackings. Hackers managed to break into multiple TV stations across the US and push out an EAS message warning that the dead were rising from their graves. It's the kind of thing you might expect in analog horror, but not real life. And yet, here we are.
Civil authorities in your area have reported that the bodies of the dead are rising from their graves and attacking the living. Follow the messages on screen that will be updated as information becomes available. Do not attempt to approach or apprehend these bodies as they are considered extremely dangerous.
The first attack, if you can call it that, went down on KRTV in Great Falls, Montana, and it happened during the Steve Wilkos show, which somehow makes it even funnier. Viewers got blasted with the full EAS treatment, the tones, the banner, everything, followed by a creepy robotic voice claiming that zombies were attacking. Local authorities were quick to reassure everyone that, no, the world wasn't ending, and you didn't have to board up your windows. Later on, people would discover that the audio came from a 2008 fake EAS video on YouTube. It didn't stop there, though. That same day, they hit stations in Michigan, Wisconsin, and even New Mexico. Shows like Barney and Friends and The Bachelor suddenly got interrupted by the undead. What I think might actually be the most interesting part about this whole thing is what happened 2 days later. A radio station in Wisconsin accidentally triggered the whole mess again when they played a clip containing real same tones, which automatically set off the EAS system at another station. This example kind of proves what I said earlier about how sensitive the system is to these stray tones, and how easily messages can spread if you play same tones at all anywhere over the air. Investigators eventually figured out that the whole incident happened because some stations never changed the default usernames and passwords on their EAS setups. These passwords could be found in the equipment manuals, which had been published online. FEMA and the FCC immediately told stations to, maybe update their passwords. After everything calmed down, federal agencies stepped in, investigations were launched, and engineers scrambled to tighten things up. The hacker was eventually arrested. Though hilarious, it proves that if someone really wanted to cause panic, the vulnerabilities were there, and that's exactly why the FCC still treats these incidents so seriously today. Meme hijacks. In early 2020, right before the world went sideways, Washington State had its own run-in with an EAS hack. On February 20th, the emergency alert system equipment used by Wave Broadband, a regional cable provider, was hijacked. Around 3,000 customers in Jefferson County suddenly found their TVs flashing multiple fake alerts, including a radiological hazard warning. Except the messages on screen were not entirely professional. They included memes and suggested the provider change its passwords. Said memes referenced Twitch streamer Vinesauce, who had absolutely nothing to do with this, which is hilarious. His fans, of course, immediately thought it sounded like something out of one of his corruption streams. But the reality was much funnier. Someone gained unauthorized access to the EAS encoder at that station and started pushing out whatever nonsense they felt like. Then, a couple weeks later, on March 2nd and 3rd, the weirdness continued. Wave Broadband pushed out a legitimate required monthly test, but the test included a leftover message from the hijacker. I'm done, you can rest now. Mr. Gerd was here. This line had already appeared during the original breach, meaning that the attacker's custom text was still somehow lingering in the system's configuration. A company official eventually confirmed that, yeah, it was basically a leftover file. Emergency Override System. The Emergency Override System is a system of emergency notification used for cable TV viewers. It's mostly gone now due to digital TV, and these were all local. For that reason, ones in different cities would often appear slightly differently. They would be activated by telephone by local law enforcement. This is pretty much the exact same thing as the local alerts we talked about earlier. Homebrew Alert Systems. I'm pretty sure this entry is referring to at-home setups people have to get emergency alerts. People have a ton of really cool builds, which I'm showing on screen now. This is also pretty common in the prepper community. The idea, I think, is that you can have this running 24/7, so you would hypothetically get alerts even if you weren't actively watching the TV. You can also get a larger alert radius and pick up on different types of alerts for the same event. It's definitely useful if there were to be an emergency, but it's also a bit of a hobby, at least in the cases I've seen online. People have custom servers and all sorts of awesome hardware that I don't understand on a technical level, but I certainly appreciate how cool it looks. Transnistria Alert. Transnistria is a fascinating place. It's a breakaway state in Moldova that claims to be the last remnant of the USSR. I've been there myself and actually made a video about it on my second channel if anyone's interested in learning more. The history of this largely unrecognized microstate is complicated, but to sum it up very, very quickly, in 1992 they fought what was effectively a war for independence, and though they are only recognized by other unrecognized countries, they are pretty much separate from Moldova. They are generally pro-Russian, and in fact, the Russian flag is one of their two official flags. Russia sends them free gas and has what they call peacekeeping troops over there. It's nestled under Ukraine right here, and though the situation in Transnistria has basically been a frozen conflict, the war in Ukraine sparked conversations about its future. It was highly speculated that if Russia fully took over Ukraine, they would roll right through Transnistria as well. Others thought Ukraine and Moldova might use the war to kick out the Russians. Honestly though, nothing's really happened, even with the war in Ukraine. It's kind of just been a stalemate. Now, I was thinking this entry might be about a 2022 incident where there were some attacks that damaged buildings, or some alert from the actual 1992 war, but I can't really find anything. What I did discover is this meme that shows up in like 5 separate videos on YouTube with this audio. And please be warned, this is potentially the worst thing you're going to listen to all day. You're welcome for blessing your ears with that. I think that beat may actually be part of an alarm, and it just became that. I don't know. I don't know why this actually exists. If anyone knows what this entry is actually talking about, please let me know in the comments. Polish EAS alarm, 1931. This is an interesting one. If you search that phrase up on YouTube, you'll find this video, which looks a lot like the many fake EAS videos that show up and have like 100 views, but this one has 2 million. That to me instantly made me take it seriously. The sound is just music, almost sounding like wind chimes. Now, obviously, this is not an EAS alert, being that it's from 1939 and it's from Poland, but the uploader penned an interesting explanation that I'm going to go ahead and read. This is not actually an EAS signal. It was just the jingle of the Polish radio in the 1930s, but the history behind it goes a little deeper than this, so read on if you're interested. The collection of notes you're hearing comes from a Polish army song titled, I'm not going to read that, still considered the anthem of the Polish armed forces to this day. It sounds ethereal and maybe even creepy to some because of the poor quality of radio transmissions at the time, but is actually just played on a normal piano. It was introduced in 1935 in honor of a marshal, once again whose name I can't pronounce, following his death in May of that year. An important thing to keep in mind is that in the 1930s, radio technology was far less advanced, and instead of having a national radio station, never mind several, people would just tune into whichever radio tower was closest to them. The most important of these towers was Warsaw 1, which used the sound from 1935 to the 6th of September 1939. This is what people heard on the morning of the 1st of September 1939, right before the announcement of the German invasion of Poland. On the 6th of September, the station was blown up by the Polish army to prevent the invading Germans from taking over the Polish airways once they would inevitably reach the radio tower. From that point on, the broadcasts were made using Warsaw 2, which used a different jingle. In fact, it was the one used by Warsaw 1 before the switch in 1935. The old jingle was taken from Chopin's Polonaise Op. 40 No. 1 in A major. This is the sound most associated with Polish wartime radio, as that was the jingle which preceded the final announcement Warsaw made before the Germans took control of the tower. So yeah, in a roundabout way, this is sort of an EAS tone. What's creepy about it is just what it signaled. For many people, this was the last thing they would have heard before their lives changed forever in World War II. It's an interesting piece of history. Japan Emergency Broadcast End of World War II. At the end of World War II, the Japanese emperor got on the air to make the dual voice broadcast, announcing that the country would be unconditionally surrendering to the Allied forces. I'm pretty sure that's what the Iceberg creator is referring to. Anyway, this in itself is hilarious. The emperor spoke in classic Japanese, which most people didn't understand. It basically sounded like Shakespeare to English speakers. He also famously said, the war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. There was huge controversy about this broadcast, as many Japanese officers did not want to surrender or spread that audio. Rebels actually raided the Imperial Palace when they found this announcement had been recorded, and they went looking for the tape so they could destroy it before it aired. However, they didn't end up finding it. It was eventually broadcast on every NHK channel across the country. For most Japanese citizens, it was their first time ever hearing the emperor's voice. It's a fascinating piece of history, especially in terms of radio and broadcast history, so I'm glad it was added here. Rare voices. I briefly mentioned how the EAS text-to-speech voices have evolved over time. One of the rarest ones is Craig, as he was introduced in 2002 but replaced by Tom in 2003. For that reason, there aren't many recordings of him, but here's an example of what he sounded like.
The National Weather Service has issued a tornado warning for the following New Jersey counties: Morris, Sussex, and Warren, Northampton County, Pennsylvania, effective until 6:16 p.m. The National Weather Service in Mount Holly, New Jersey has issued a tornado warning for West Central Morris County in northern New Jersey, southwestern Sussex County in northwestern New Jersey.
Another example is the William voice, used for Amber Alerts from just 2009 to 2011.
We have just received this important information regarding an abducted child in Federal Way, Washington, King County. Valley Communications Center is looking for a child who was last seen at 2626 Southwest 327 St. Federal Way, Washington, and is believed to be in danger. The child's name is Carly Gaston. She is 8 years old, white female with brown hair and brown eyes. She is believed to be 3 feet and 6 inches, weighing 65 pounds.
Some rare voices are also tied to a specific region, like the Joey voice, which is common to hear for Amber Alerts in Alberta, but not the rest of Canada. Use of EBS after 1997. The EBS was replaced by the EAS in 1997. I can't actually find any info about it being used after this time, though. So if you know of an example, please let me know. EAS message with cuss words. I hate to give you guys another dead entry, but I can't find anything about an official EAS message with swear words in it. General TV hijackings have had cuss words in them, and it's actually fairly common amongst those hacks. Hypothetically, since it's all text-to-speech, an EAS alert could have swearing in it. That would be funny. Imagine them talking to, like, specifically Midwestern dads watching a tornado, and they say, like, get the F inside, or something. Very unlikely, but that would be pretty funny. 2017 EAS End of World broadcast. This one is pretty funny. In September of 2017, there was an EAS test that went totally normal. However, in Southern California, things were a bit different. In Orange County and surrounding areas, cable TV subscribers of Cox Communications and Charter Spectrum especially saw and heard a startling broadcast interruption around 11:05 a.m., which included a voice saying, "Realize this, extremely violent times will come," alongside all sorts of other doomsday end-of-world claims. What they were hearing through their TVs was actually a Christian radio broadcast. The station did not receive the signal to turn off in preparation for the EAS test, and not only did it continue broadcasting, but somehow ended up being the audio on TV when the visuals for the EAS alert was out. So the result was something like this. Anyway, this creeped a lot of people out, especially because a guy had just been talking about a doomsday prediction which was set to occur 2 days later. It's a pretty odd coincidence. Like, that audio could have been any station whatsoever, but for it specifically to pick up Christian radio talking about the apocalypse is a wild coincidence. Low-pitched/slow EAS glitch. There have been all sorts of glitched EAS broadcasts, usually with interference from a station that didn't turn off, or with the audio or visuals just missing. Often the voice glitches, leading to results that range from interesting to terrifying. Here's one example of a voice glitch sounding like a robot.
The National Weather Service only has issued a severe thunderstorm warning for Montgomery County in central North Carolina, eastern Stanley County in central North Carolina, until 7:15 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
That one is kind of cool, but I wouldn't call it a low pitch. When the pitch gets really messed up, it might sound like this.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, it's creepy. Oh my god.
Here's another example of that happening.
The National Weather Service in Grand Rapids has issued a tornado warning for.
And one last one.
This is a coordinated monthly test of the broadcast stations of your area.
Some commenters have mentioned this is due to encoders glitching, leading to a deeper voice, but I'm not sure. There's a whole playlist of these that you can check out. Practice/demo warning. A demo warning with the same code DMO is a rare type of EAS test. For whatever reason, this is coded differently than required monthly or weekly tests. Apparently, these are sometimes used in areas that are very prone to a specific type of emergency, like tornadoes, so that drills can be done more frequently. These are one of the more rare codes to come across, so for people that hunt EAS alerts, this might be a rarity depending on where they live. Here are some examples of what it looks like.
This is a practice demo.
You could see how it actually says practice/demo warning right there. Color codes for EAS messages. So in the previous video, I talked about how this might refer to different kinds of alerts used in California in particular, issued by law enforcement. I'll play that clip again, but I do have more to add to this subject. I'm not sure if I'm about to talk about the right thing, because the EAS system uses SAME, nothing color-coded. But there are some messages that have color names, like the silver alert I mentioned earlier, which is sent out for missing seniors. It appears these may be local to California, but over there they also have a yellow alert for fatal hit and runs, and blue alerts to ask the public for help finding fugitives. They work the same way insofar as they override broadcasts. Anyway, as some commenters pointed out, this probably refers to some other things. The first, suggested by some random person 333, suggests that it was about the weather.gov website, which will display a map with alerts color-coded like this here. Also, Swordman128 pointed out that some EAS screens, specifically those issued by VDS and TextCan MSI, will change color based on the degree of the warning. Green for tests, yellow for watches, and red for warnings. So yeah, the OP probably wasn't referring to those California alerts, but instead this stuff. Tsunami warnings. The EAS system has frequently been used to warn of tsunamis in Hawaii and the Pacific states. Same codes TSA or TSW are used for tsunami watches and warnings, respectively. I'll play two of these from recent history.
The sort of first effects.
Tsunami threat to Hawaii. There is approximately 30 minutes to the first wave arrival, which is estimated at 7:10 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time.
This is the National Weather Service with a tsunami warning bulletin from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. A tsunami warning is in effect for the state.
They're honestly pretty terrifying. I don't know why, but I feel like I'd be more worried about a tsunami than a tornado. The EAS alerts don't help reduce that fear. These warnings are dramatic and terrifying. (2014) EAN fail. EAN is the same code used for a national emergency message, which is the one the president would use to alert us of a nuclear attack. It's never really been used, but it was tested in 2011. Funnily enough, in 2014, audio from that 2011 test was played on the Bobby Jones Show in an attempt to make fun of how an EAS alert had been scheduled for a World Series game by Fox. However, the tone played over the airwaves actually activated the EAS system on some devices, leading to the station getting a $1 million fine from the FCC. I can't actually find the recording, but you can listen to Bobby Jones talk about it here.
What did you get fined $1 million for?
Well, so I've been fined a couple.
Sued or fined?
Fined by the FCC. There was a World Series game. Maybe it was like Game 6. The Nationals were playing, and there was a home run in like the 8th inning that was pretty much going to win the game. And right as the ball was flying over the fence the night before my show, it goes to one of those, this is a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test. Right as the home run was being hit to win the game. And so I looked up one of those EAS alerts on YouTube, and I dubbed it in. I was going to use it, and I was talking about it. I mean, it was a throwaway bit.
Yeah.
It was nothing revolutionary. It definitely wasn't worth $1 million fine. And so I was like, you're watching the game. Your team's down 3-2. You got a guy on first. Pow! It's back, way back. And you don't even get to see the home run. So then I started doing other famous moments in history. And I would be like, all right, looks like the spaceship is going to land in 3. This is a test. And so I started doing this.
Yes.
But this button that I pushed, again, was just taken off the internet. Turns out, and this is where the twist happens. Turns out that was the alert for all hell is broken loose from the White House.
Oh, God.
And so some of the EAS equipment had been updated around the country to change to a new tone. So when I played this tone, different radio stations in cities all across America started shutting down, just locking up. Because if you guys have like an
2009 North Carolina EAS test. I missed this entry in the original video, and all I have to say is that one commenter suggested that North Carolina began mandating EAS usage in 2009. I'm not quite sure if that makes sense, as I thought this was a federal standard, but it's the closest idea I have at the moment. If this is true, the OP might be talking about, say, the very first EAS test in the state. Shelter in place. Shelter-in-place warnings can be sent by the EAS, and they're sort of a catch-all for different issues. They could hypothetically be activated for anything where police need people to stay inside. Weather, sure, but also worse things. It's been used for active shooters, like in this example.
Androscoggin County officials have issued a county-wide shelter-in-place order. Please make sure your homes and vehicles are secured.
And here it was used regarding a truck fire.
The following urgent message is transmitted at the request of Marinette County Emergency Management. On July 18, 2008, at approximately 12:30 p.m., there was an accident involving a methanol tanker at the intersection of Highway 141 and Town Corner Road in the town of Iceberg. At this
Finally, here's a time it happened for flash flooding.
Local authority has issued shelter-in-place warning for the following counties or areas. Coconino, Arizona, at 1:33 p.m. on August 24th.
Boiled water advisory. A lesser-known EAS alert is the boil water advisory, with same code BWW. It's never been used, but it does exist. I think the reason it's never gone out is because boiled water advisories, while serious, are not usually as urgent of an emergency as, say, a tornado. Typically, the issues with tainted water wouldn't kill you that fast, so people just rely on social media and news broadcasts. Now, I can imagine a situation where there's more of a dire need to get out a boil water advisory, which is why the same code exists in principle. There have been mocks by people to show what it would hypothetically look like, such as this example right here.
At the request of Carroll County Emergency Management, Garrett County Emergency Management, and the West Virginia Emergency Management Agency. A boil water advisory is in effect for all residents in Carroll County and Garrett County due to a contamination issue in the water supply.
The Metalpocalypse incident. This is a funny entry because in the first upload, I suggested this was referring to a specific episode of the show Metalpocalypse, where the EAS system was sort of a plot point. Now, I'll go ahead and play what I said, and then add what I have since learned. So I'm almost certain this is talking about the Adult Swim show Metalopocalypse. There's an episode, specifically Season 2 Episode 10, called Death Gov, where the plot revolves around one of the characters becoming a governor, and then a hurricane strikes Florida, and he wants to destroy it, but he can't destroy a hurricane. I'm not sure, I've never watched the show, and the plot sounds pretty stupid. Anyway, they bring up how annoying the emergency broadcast system is. It's just a little bit. I'll play it, I suppose.
Have you used the emergency broadcasting system?
I hate that thing, the beep!
Oh
yeah, beep. No way.
This is a message. Emergency broadcast system.
All emergency systems have been looted and destroyed, sir.
Stole the beep? How to steal the beep?
Are so low. I'd steal that.
What the f do you guys even do here?
We named the hurricane, sir.
You named the hurricane? Did you?
So anyway, that episode was released in June of 2008. What some commenters have brought to my attention is that, in October of that same year, a different episode of Metalopocalypse was interrupted by what is quite possibly the loudest recorded EAS test of all time. I'm just going to play this with the volume tuned way down, but you should still be able to see just how different the test audio is from the audio in the show.
Let me just get him back there.
Just go around. Don't climb over. Tony, dude, I couldn't even hear your bass at all.
Oh, my amp is off.
To the North Carolina Emergency Alert System, which is only a test. Broadcasters in cooperation with local, state, and national authorities have developed the system to provide the public with important emergency information should the need arise. This concludes the monthly test of the North Carolina Emergency Alert System.
I'm sure this wasn't intentional, but it is super funny to me that the episode complaining about the alert came out before this incident. Surely it's just a funny coincidence that this happened. Anyway, thanks to the commenters who pointed that out for me. The other Hawaii emergency action. I'm not sure if this is correct, but one commenter suggested this entry might refer to the fact that the employee behind the infamous 2018 Hawaii missile incident had, quote, confused practice drills once during a fire incident and another time during a tsunami incident drill. This guy was moving crazy. You'd think after 2 mistakes that they'd just take away this guy's alarm privileges, but no. So maybe this entry is referring to one of those incidents, but again, I'm not 100% sure. EAS predicted Hoboken train crash. This is one of the craziest entries on this iceberg that honestly could be all the way at the bottom. I've actually talked about this one before in my TV hijackings iceberg. In late September of 2016, a train in Hoboken, New Jersey crashed, leading to 1 fatality and 114 injuries. The crash occurred after the train operator, who had undiagnosed sleep apnea, fell asleep. However, the night before this happened, there was a civil alert message in New York and New Jersey. I'll play it in full and see if you catch what's weird about it. Did you see that brief message at the top? Something that might have been out of place? Would you, could you, on a train? Many people think this was some kind of warning, taunt, prediction, or even message from beyond the grave regarding the train crash. Eventually, the TV station confirmed it was a hack of some kind. FEMA did not send it out, and it was not a scheduled test. The line itself comes from a Dr. Seuss book, so it's weird that it would show up in any sort of EAS code at all. Some think that, hypothetically, there could have been some internal testing going on using Dr. Seuss lines, But basically everything surrounding this discussion is unconfirmed. There's a good video by Scare Theater on the subject, but it doesn't point towards any bulletproof conclusion. WKTV apologized for the interruption, merely saying it was a technical error. But in another comment, they mentioned that FEMA was investigating the situation as a hack. I won't get too much deeper into this here because there's honestly just not a satisfying conclusion. It really seems like just a terrifying coincidence, but it is still unanswered and remains one of the creepiest things on this iceberg, in my opinion. Ice storm warning. Ice storm warnings are an uncommon EAS alert, which are slightly different from blizzard or snow warnings. They're different insofar as they are specifically about freezing rain and not snow. One source suggests that there's only 3 archived copies of these alerts available on the internet. I'll show an example of one here.
Ice storm warning in effect until 2 p.m. Central Standard Time this afternoon. The National Weather Service in Tulsa has issued an ice storm warning, which is in effect until 2 p.m. Central Standard Time this afternoon. The freezing rain advisory is no longer in effect. Affected area, the Interstate 44 corridor in northeast Oklahoma. Timing, ongoing this morning. Temperatures are expected to warm above freezing by early afternoon and will end the risk for additional icing.
Hiroshima/Nagasaki emergency broadcasts. An hour before the first nuke went off in Hiroshima, the Japanese early warning radar detected aircraft heading towards the city. They turned on air raid sirens, but soon after realized there were only 3 or so planes in the sky, and lifted the warning. Presumably, they thought the planes were just for reconnaissance or something. Now, I don't think there's any recording of this. A similar thing happened in Hiroshima too, where any warnings that were in effect were pretty quickly lifted. Obviously, as we all know, those weren't spy planes, and after the bomb hit, the Japanese didn't fully realize what had even happened until Washington addressed the world, explaining what had occurred 16 hours later. The entry might be talking about that address and not the air raid sirens themselves, but I'm not entirely sure. Disney Broadcast System. This could be talking about a couple of things. It may refer to a hypothetical pseudo-EAS system in place at a Disney park, given how big they are and the amount of safety precautions that they have to take. However, I'm pretty sure the creator is specifically talking about this clip from the 1989 Mickey Mouse Club series.
This is a test. For the next 15 seconds, the Mickey Mouse Club will conduct a test of the Disney Broadcast System. Remember, this is only a test. In the movie Bambi, what is the name of the cute rabbit? How many nephews does Donald Duck have? What is the name of the fairy in the film Peter Pan? What is Winnie the Pooh's favorite food? Who does Prince Eric marry in the movie The Little Mermaid? This concludes our test of the Disney Broadcast System. Had this been an actual emergency, the questions would have been much more difficult, like, what is the name of the 49th Dalmatian? Recite the Latin inscription that transforms Wilby Daniel into the shaggy dog. How many EPA highway miles does Herbie the Love Bug average? When the Lady and the Tramp went to the Italian restaurant, who picked up the check?
There was also a child detection emergency broadcast, which is presumably used in some Monsters, Inc. ride at one of the Disney amusement parks. I don't really know much about them off the back of my head. But anyway, here it is.
This is a test of the child detection emergency broadcast system. This is only a test. This concludes our test of the child detection emergency broadcast system. If there had been an actual sighting of a human child in Monstropolis, you would have been instructed where to tune in for news and official information. This concludes our test of the child detection emergency broadcast system.
Dwarf EAS glitch. In this video, which shows one of the earliest EAS clips uploaded to YouTube, we can hear an EAS alert which uses a pitch much higher than intended. For that reason, it's been referred to as the dwarf EAS glitch. Take a listen.
That sounds horrible. What the fuck?
A severe thunderstorm warning remains in effect for Warwick and southeastern Pike counties in
Um,
First EAS alert is lost media. The modern EAS system as we know it started in 1997, and the first specific broadcast isn't known. There are recordings of EAS alerts from that year, but it's unknown what was specifically the very first normal activation. Unused warnings. There are about 80 SAME codes out there, defined by the FCC and upheld by the Consumer Electronics Association standards. The CEA has defined 15 SAME codes for receiver decoders that are not currently listed by the FCC, meaning hypothetically these could be added but aren't ready to go just yet. These are biological hazard warning, boil water warning, chemical hazard warning, contaminated water warning, dam watch, dam break warning, contagious disease warning, evacuation watch, food contamination warning, iceberg warning, industrial fire warning, landslide warning, wildfire watch, power outage advisory, and wildfire warning. Other weird glitches. This is a pretty broad entry, and I feel like we've covered a lot of glitches already, like pitch changes or missing audios or visuals, and of course the message from God about the end of the world. I honestly think the weirdest one is the Lady Gaga audio, but I guess that's up for debate. I won't add any others here for now. Kai providing support for those during the lockdown. This entry might be referring to the fact that during a live stream, Kai Cenat announced a lockdown because there was a shooting in Akron, and the University of Akron put their own lockdown into place. I'm not really sure what the showing support part means, but that's the closest thing I can think of. Use of SAME headers before EAS. SAME headers do actually predate the modern EAS system by some years. SAME originated in the early 1980s when NOAA's National Weather Service began testing a system that used dual-tone, multi-frequency analog tones to send data over the radio. By 1985, NWS forecast offices were experimenting with inserting special digital codes at the start and end of messages involving threats to life or property, allowing alerts to target specific areas. Although the plan was for all NOAA weather radio messages to include these codes from the outset, widespread adoption progressed slowly until 1995, when federal funding enabled full development of the technology. Nationwide development followed in 1997 when the FCC incorporated SAME into the new emergency alert system. Of course, EAS. NOAA later established an official SAME standard for weather radio receivers in 2003. The FCC also adopted SAME for EAS use in 1997, and Environment Canada implemented it for Weather Radio Canada in 2004. Similar to the earlier EBS dual-tone attention signal, SAME creates a distinctive, easily identifiable sound, the SAME header, familiar to all of us from tests and alerts. Also, broadcast engineers apparently call these sequence of buzzes and chirps duck farts, which I think is hilarious. Tornado warning in 1948. In March 1948, Tinker Air Force Base, near Oklahoma City, was struck by two devastating tornadoes, one on March 20th and a second on March 25th. Both storms would likely correspond to modern-day F3 intensity. The first tornado on March 20th inflicted enormous destruction. Hundreds of aircraft were damaged or destroyed, and the losses were around 10 million. A record for Oklahoma at the time. In the aftermath, two meteorologists on base, Major Ernest J. Fawbush and Captain Robert C. Miller, analyzed the weather conditions and realized that the patterns on March 25th closely mirrored those from the earlier event. Against conventional wisdom of the day, they issued what was effectively the first tornado forecast in history. When a tornado struck the base that evening, only 100 yards from the March 20th path, the forecast was proven correct, making it the first predictive tornado forecast on record. Previous to this, the Weather Bureau actually had a policy of not issuing tornado warnings for fear of panicking the public, which is a decision of all time for sure. While there is of course no EAS alert for this event, it was a critical step in meteorological history, pushing the government towards eventually creating the warning system we know of today. And of course, changing the culture around warning people in the first place. Air Force Tornado Warning. I'm really not sure about this one. The Air Force is sort of involved in some severe weather education, and you could find basic publications from them regarding what to do in a tornado. This also might be referencing the airbase we just mentioned in the previous entry. Tom replaced Craig. I briefly mentioned how Craig was the EAS voice used in 2002, but how he was very quickly replaced by Tom. I think this is just on here super low because it's a tad weird that Craig was phased out so quickly, whereas the other ones at least managed to be around for a few years. He's also called AT&T Mike. Lots of Craig recordings are considered lost media and somewhat sought after in the community because of their rarity. Here's another clip from him just to remind you what he sounded like. He's also shown up on a few rare occasions after 2002, which is pretty interesting.
A civil authority has issued a nuclear power plant warning for the following New Jersey counties, Cumberland and Salem, effective until 6 p.m. This is a test. This message is for people in New Jersey only. At approximately 7:20 p.m. today, a routine test of the Salem/Hope Creek nuclear generating station SOAT siren system was conducted.
Draft of EAS in 1994. The EAS was approved by the FCC in 1994, though it wasn't rolled out until 97. That's all I can really think about for this entry. It could be referring to lost media, as we don't have any public recordings of the EAS being tested from before 1997, so maybe there's something lurking around there from some beta test, but I don't find that super likely. Emergency Action Notification about North Korean Nuke Message. The Emergency Action Notification, now called the National Emergency Message, has never been used. I'm sure there's a draft of one ready for a North Korean nuke, which we might have actually seen something pretty close to that in the Hawaii situation, and that might be what this entry is talking about. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what to add here. Unrecognized message. An unrecognized message is a sort of message type that can be heard on weather radios. Essentially, if there's too much noise and the same code is unreadable, weather radios will simply display the phrase unrecognized message, or something to that effect. I believe it's only a visual message on these types of radios. Evacuation immediate. Evacuation immediate is a message type with the same code EVI used to warn people to evacuate given a hurricane, flooding, fire, or even gas leak. Though it is called evacuation immediate, it is read off as immediate evacuation, which is a bit odd. It's a little bit rarer because it's sort of a catch-all warning. Ponani EAS message. So, if this entry is referring to an actual NSFW EAS alert, I'm not sure what that would be. To my knowledge, nothing relevant to that word has ever been broadcast on the EAS. However, there was an instance of this sort of thing being broadcast on TV, probably by a disgruntled employee, and other similar instances have happened across the world. The best guess I have at this point is that the OP is referring to this Onion bit, which is a fake news report about porn being played over the EAS. I'm honestly just not sure. Wartime Broadcasting Service / Protect and Survive. Protect and Survive was a British public information campaign produced from 1974 to 1980. It included films, posters, and all sorts of information on how to protect oneself from a nuclear attack. It's sort of like a British version of Duck and Cover that we had in America. This is an example of a video that was produced and aired as part of that campaign. It's such a strange cartoon in my opinion. It was made for the general public, which of course includes families and kids, but the choice of animating it like this is pretty interesting. Also, the Wartime Broadcasting Service was similar. It was an actual wing of the BBC that would have informed the general public of any missile attacks in Britain. And it's actually unknown if that still exists today, and if so, in what capacity. Much of their stuff from the 70s and 80s has all been archived, and you can find it on the BBC's website. Black and white couple photo incident. Initially, I missed this one too, but a couple of y'all helped me out with it. It most likely refers to this incident. On the 13th of July, 2007, ABC affiliate WJLA-TV was airing an episode of Good Morning Washington when its digital broadcast was overtaken by a still image of a dark-haired couple. The image stayed on screen from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. before the feed returned to Good Morning Washington. Notably, WJLA's analog signal was unaffected by the disruption. Although initial speculation suggested a signal hijacking, WJLA later said that it was a malfunction in its Harris flexicoder, causing a frozen image from an unidentified Oprah Winfrey episode to premiere. No real-time footage of the event has since surfaced, and the identities of the two individuals in the photo remain entirely unknown. This is a super cool lost media topic in and of itself, and I encourage you to come forward if you might have any leads about this, though I doubt any of us watching will, since it's been unsolved for so long. Another commenter suggested it might be referring to the Wyoming incident, but I feel like that's pretty unlikely since this is so far down. PDS Tornado Warning. Okay, that's a bit of a long title. PDS stands for Particularly Dangerous Situation, and a PDS warning is a type of warning used by the National Weather Service. The PDS is an entirely different thing from the EAS. My understanding of it is that it's basically just a rating of danger regarding a storm, and that danger is communicated via news networks, so you wouldn't hear about a PDS via the EAS interruptions or alerts. They're also pretty uncommon, with there only being an average of less than 24 annually from 1996 to 2005. It sort of seems like an auxiliary system to the EAS that just isn't as relevant anymore. There are subsections of PDS alerts for tornadoes, including watches and warnings, and I'm presuming this means they were initially called Severe Tornado Warning at one point instead of just Tornado Warning, but yeah, I'm really not sure. Again guys, just quick apology for all the missing entries in this iceberg. When I figure them out or get a hold of the OP, I will correct these in a supercut, like I said in part 1. So if you know the answers to any of these in the comments, I will make sure to thank you in the video and include your expertise. Anyway, moving on. Fairly Odd Parents EAS test fail. This is an interesting case of potential lost media surrounding an EAS alert. According to a Reddit post by u/Cleo's boyfriend, also known as Brian Herbert on YouTube, in the r/Mandela Effect subreddit on September 21st, 2017, he recalled a required monthly test in Massachusetts where the Ideonics screen interrupted the Nickelodeon show The Fairly Odd Parents 3 or 4 times in some winter of either 2004, 5, or 6. He also remembers that one of these tests may have included the Empire Carpet commercial script and jingle. However, of course, given this is just a Reddit account, it can't really be verified. The post provided little supporting information and was shared in a subreddit dedicated to the Mandela Effect. Of course, a phenomenon involving false or distorted memories, so even the original poster isn't certain about whether it occurred. This is kind of up in the air completely in terms of authenticity. Obviously, I'm not saying it didn't happen or it couldn't have happened, but no evidence corroborating the event has surfaced. If by some weird reason any of you guys do remember this though, you would be a valuable member in a niche lost media hunt, so you should comment below if you think it was real. Tornado watch issued as civil emergency. We talked earlier about civil emergencies, which kind of work again as a catch-all emergency alert that can be used for a variety of things. There's a whole playlist of them on YouTube, which usually cover wildfires and blizzards. Based on this entry, I would guess one of these was issued for a tornado, which is weird because one could simply just issue a tornado warning instead of a civil emergency, and this would kind of add a redundant step. However, I can't find an actual clip or photo of it though. Usage of old NOAA voices post-2016. In 2016, the Paul voice was rolled out, replacing, at the time, Tom and Donna. However, there have been some scattered reports here and there of Tom's voice being used randomly. For example, in 2021, this alert went out with Tom's voice.
Maintenance on the NOAA National Weather Service transmitter that serves your area. Technicians will have your NOAA weather radio transmitter back on the air as soon as possible.
What's interesting to note about that specific incident is that winter weather had damaged the station, and that was actually a maintenance message. So there's some evidence to suggest that these voices are still transmittable in unique or special circumstances, such as an equipment failure. Nuclear power plant warning and food contamination warning. I'm going to combine these two entries. I know we talked about water contamination before, but these basically refer to the same type of thing. These are both same codes that exist, but thankfully have never actually been issued. The nuclear power plant warning has the same code NUW and would be issued if a plant was damaged or there had been some sort of nuclear disaster. The food contamination warning, same code FCW, also has not been used. There are mock alerts for these though, which is what I've been showing on the screen. Joplin Tornado EAS. The Joplin tornado was a devastating EF5 tornado that struck Joplin, Missouri on May 22nd of 2011, causing catastrophic destruction along a path nearly 6 miles long and up to a mile wide. It killed 158 people, injured more than 1,000, and became one of the deadliest and costliest tornadoes in U.S. history. The tornado destroyed thousands of buildings, including homes, schools, and the main hospital, leaving large portions of the city in ruin. On top of that, the Joplin EAS alerts made it seem relatively minor. There was no tornado emergency issued, as issuing that kind of alert, which is higher than a watch or a warning, really wasn't standard practice, although of course in hindsight, we could see why it would have been necessary. There's been a debate as to whether or not better technology or a better warning could have saved lives that night, because Joplin really was something else. It just developed so quickly. Nobody really expected it to be as huge as it was. There's plenty of news coverage about this event, and news broadcasts where you can see the tornado warning on the bottom of the screen basically, but I think this poster might be indicating that an actual EAS recording from Joplin that night is lost media. I haven't been able to find online the actual EAS alert from that event. Not all of these alerts get recorded, and of course, at the time, nobody would have known that Joplin would have become as big of a deal as it was. I could be wrong on this one, but I do think a well-documented and verified alert isn't public at the moment. If I am wrong and there is one out there, please let me know. Header tones used before EAS. As I believe I mentioned, same tones were a thing before the full implementation of the EAS. Same tones have existed since the 80s, in some form or another. The National Weather Service started using a beta version, so to speak, before any National Weather Service messages concerning damage to life or property. So, yeah, these little codes have predated the system as a whole. This is not a test. These are the words you do not want to hear. Common to all real EAS alerts, this is when you know you're in real danger. It's also on the national emergency message as well. Not sure if this refers to something else specific, but I really doubt it. World-ending broadcast. I am 99% sure the OP is referring to the Turner Doomsday broadcast. The Turner Doomsday video was a 1-minute clip prepared by CNN at the direction of its founder, Ted Turner, back in 1980. If the world ever truly ended, CNN would stay on until that final moment, playing this video as its final broadcast. The video features a US military band performing the Christian hymn, Nearer, My God, to Thee, a somber farewell to civilization. Although the video was lost media for so long, it became public in 2015 when a former CNN intern uploaded a recording he discovered in the network's internal archive system. The file was labeled Turner Doomsday Video, HFR, meaning hold for release, till end of the world confirmed. It's a bit dated now, and you may have seen it before on any other video talking about creepy stuff, regarding television or whatnot, but it's only a minute long, so I will play it. The story, especially the story of its leak, is pretty interesting. It had been rumored for like 30 years before it went public, and for that reason, it's considered one of the most iconic, successful lost media hunts of all time. CIA produced nuclear war broadcast. This might honestly be the most fascinating entry on this entire list. There's a full article on this situation, which I highly recommend you read as well. In December of 1986, the US government ran a massive drill called Mighty Derringer, involving agencies like the Pentagon, CIA, FBI, and the National Nuclear Security Administration, simulating a nuclear terrorist attack on a major American city. So while the CIA was a part of this for sure, they weren't the only part. As part of the exercise, they secretly recorded a fictional local TV news broadcast claiming a nuclear bomb had detonated in downtown Indianapolis, complete with evacuated streets, a federal response team mobilizing to defuse further threats, and a helicopter news reporter flying over the city. The fake broadcast begins as a normal Channel 9 eyewitness news segment, with an anchor named Jeff Schwartz, warning that terrorists have deployed nuclear devices downtown and federal nuclear response teams are en route. The clip then simulates the bomb's detonation. As the helicopter flies over the city, a sudden white dome appears. The feed cuts to static, and when the studio anchor reappears, there's a loud boom, followed by the anchor's shocked reaction before the video ends. Although the scenario was entirely staged, the video remained classified and virtually unknown to the public until 2022, when Gizmodo released it after obtaining the footage via a Freedom of Information Act request. The disclosure provided a rare look at how US agencies once used realistic, false news broadcasts to test their readiness for nuclear emergencies. It's fascinating to me that this video made it all the way up until 2022 to be released. It just makes you wonder what else is out there. The quality is pretty professional, and I'm surprised they just never released this. It could have been used to educate people, I'm sure, but this never made its way out of closed doors until it was no longer relevant. You can watch the full thing on YouTube, but I'll show you some of the important parts.
We are now in day 4. You know that few details are available, but this much we know. A large portion of downtown Indianapolis remains evacuated. Now, reports are sketchy at this point, but we do know that apparently there are terrorists holed up in the downtown part of our city with nuclear devices. How many people, how many devices, we're not sure. But we have just learned here at the Channel 9 newsroom that a federal response team has been sent in to neutralize the threat. We've obviously lost our microwave link with Chopper 9. Can someone get on the two-way radio and see if they can contact Ann and see what's going on out there? In the meanwhile, I'd like to, again, caution our audience against over-concern.
SSTEAS. Steez, I don't know if that's actually how you pronounce it, but whatever, was an EAS YouTuber whose channel has since been deleted. He was convicted on charges related to pedophilia, I believe sexual exploitation of a minor, but I'm not 100% sure. He either deleted his channel or it was removed, but I'm pretty sure he deleted it. Some, but not all of his videos have been archived on YouTube. You may have remembered him from the past if you watched these fake EAS videos growing up like I did, but yeah, he's gone now. I'm not sure if he's still in jail or not, but he's certainly not making videos, at least under that name. There was never an EAN issued. As I've said a few times, no EAN has ever been issued because, thankfully, the USA has not been struck by a nuke or anything. Homes and businesses will be completely swept from their foundations. Man, for the life of me, this was driving me absolutely crazy. I knew I had heard this somewhere, but just couldn't place it. Some of you guys even suggested that it was lost media or a Mandela effect situation. However, as was pointed out to me by the Person6775, this comes from, or at least is featured in, an EAS scenario created by MCCH4P. It's a video about an EF6 tornado obliterating Dallas. and it's actually pretty well done and terrifying. It has millions of views, so you may have actually seen it before if you're interested in this sort of thing. It feels good to know that I wasn't crazy, and that this did exist somewhere. Like I said, maybe there's an earlier instance of this phrase being used, but I am pretty sure that it comes from this video.
Flying debris will be deadly to those caught without shelter. Homes and businesses will be completely swept from their foundations. Trees will be uprooted or snapped. Debris.
Columbia Disaster EAS message. The 2003 Space Shuttle Columbia disaster occurred when the shuttle disintegrated during re-entry after damage to its left wing, caused by foam insulation breaking off during the launch sequence, allowed superheated air to penetrate the structure. All 7 astronauts aboard were killed, leading to a 2-year grounding of the shuttle program and major changes in safety procedures by NASA. Interestingly, the EAS was activated in response to this event. Sources say it warned residents not to touch any space debris. This is interesting for being the only EAS alert of its kind. I mean, there was never before, nor has been after, any rocket ship-related EAS alert. It might be the most unique one ever. But it wasn't recorded. There's a recreation of it on YouTube, but basically we only have eyewitness accounts about the actual message. The text might exist somewhere, but actual footage from people's TV or radio does not. This makes sense, as it was 2003. It wasn't as easy to record stuff back then, and the EAS hobby of sorts hadn't really quite blossomed yet. Nowadays, people have radios waiting 24/7 for rare EAS alerts and record them automatically, and that's pretty inexpensive and easy to set up. But back then, it wasn't the case. So many of those initial recordings are just completely lost. Law enforcement warning. Law enforcement warnings with the same code LEW are generated when local law enforcement notifies the National Weather Service of a situation that is then broadcast over the EAS. These include bomb warnings, missing persons, escaped convicts, and in one case, scammers impersonating police officers going door to door. They are very unique warnings and are sort of a catch-all for any emergency that's being handled by police. They can go out for missing kids, but that's usually handled by the Amber Alert. There are plenty of examples of these to be found online. Here are a couple of interesting ones.
There have been multiple scam calls that appear to be coming from Adams County Sheriff's Department stating there is a warrant for arrest and to pay money over the phone. Do not agree to pay any money to any law enforcement agency over the telephone.
The following message is transmitted at the request of Tennessee. Name, Hawkins, Amanda, missing sex, female race, white height, 500 eye color, brown weight, 130 pounds hair color, brown date of birth, September 22nd, 1992, suspect vehicle description, 2005 gold Cadillac Saint displaying Tennessee registration, X948 child description.
We have an active situation in the area of Green Road and Pewaukee Road in the city of Pewaukee. Avoid the area. Shelter in place.
Radiological hazard warning. One of the most unique and creepiest real EAS warnings ever is a radiological hazard warning. These are uncommon, but do exist, and the only recorded one was the hack we mentioned earlier in 2020. The National Weather Service says that these types of alerts would go out in the following circumstances. A warning of the loss, discovery, or release of a radiological hazard. Examples include the theft of a radioactive isotope used for medical, seismic, or other purposes, the discovery of radioactive materials, a transportation, air, truck, or rail, etc., accident which may involve nuclear weapons, nuclear fuel, or radioactive wastes. Authorized officials may recommend protective actions to be taken if a radioactive hazard is discovered. End of the world broadcast. I think this is a double entry, being the same as the Turner thing. There's also another double down here, so I'm going to skip that one as well. Finally, these two Amber Alert related entries are really similar, so I'll just cover them. In some circumstances, children who have had Amber Alerts go out for them are found dead. But what is even more sinister is the idea that the Amber Alert might have actually sparked the killing. Meaning, the kidnapper got the alert and then had the idea to kill the kid they kidnapped because they learned the authorities were on their tail. A research document published in the Albany Government Law Review suggested something called the precipitation effect. I'll read a section from that paper. Similarly, an abductor intent on kidnapping and killing a child is unlikely to be deterred by the Amber Alert system. Indeed, the perpetrator might even have intended to keep the child alive for a period of time, but after seeing the Amber Alert, decides to kill him or her to get rid of the evidence of the abduction. If this precipitation event occurs, the alert has actually had the opposite effect than what was intended. That paper brings up all sorts of other issues, like the bystander effect, wherein people might actually be less vigilant in the wake of an Amber Alert, instead thinking that someone else will be. I've read a couple papers about this. I actually have a master's degree in criminology, so this is really interesting to me. And it seems like that in particular is more of a theory than a documented phenomenon. Usually when kids are killed during abductions, it's within the first 3 hours, which is much quicker than any alert can actually go out. Could this happen? Or has it? It's certainly possible. I'm sure a government agency investigating the situation could figure out if a perpetrator actually received an Amber Alert on their phone, even if they cleared the notification, and then match the timeline of the death up to that. If that's happened though, it's not a common detail I've seen reflected in any investigation. It is something to consider though when we ponder the future of this program and its present usefulness. Yummy Buffet commercial. For the last entry, we have possibly the most terrifying, dreadful, inhumane EAS alert ever broadcasted. I'm just kidding. I'm going to play some of this commercial and explain it afterwards.
Come and experience Yummy Buffet. It is located between Lawrence and Pulaski in Chicago. Yummy Buffet is a new and nicely decorated all-you-can-eat restaurant. How about some sushi from the chef?
This ad was uploaded to YouTube in 2011, so while it might be older than that, it's at least 14 years old. People think that the owner of this restaurant didn't speak English, so they used the same text-to-speech engine as the EAS to make this video. There's all sorts of grammatical errors, like dessert being pronounced as desert, which adds to this claim. I think it's hilarious, honestly. It's the only video this channel has ever uploaded. Anyway, I hope that served as a bit of a palate cleanser after talking about dead kids. Well guys, thank you so much for sticking to the end of my longest video ever. Like I said, this was only able to be created thanks to the help of you guys who pointed entries out to me in the previous uploads. So if you contributed, thank you so much for being awesome. Also, thank you for just being here and watching this video. You guys are all awesome too. Anyway, if you enjoy watching icebergs, you better stick around by subscribing, otherwise you may never find my channel again. I have a lot of icebergs coming up, as well as some other similar videos that I think you all will enjoy, so make sure to stay tuned for those. There's a lot of good things coming this month and the next. If you want to be incredibly awesome, consider subscribing to my Patreon to watch every new video early, and also subscribe to my second channel. I'm actually about to upload a new video there. It's basically just random things that I think are cool from real life. Besides that, everyone have a great night, or morning, whenever you're watching this, and thanks again. I really hope to see you all soon.